Chapter 10 The Dancing Goron. Hours earlier. In Castletown, they called him the Happy Masked Salesman. To many, Halvard was a simple merchant. Almost no one would have guessed that he was interested in far more than just making an honest living. Nor would they guess that he had once been far more than a trader. Halvard preferred it this way. His life as a merchant was merely a mask. Few would have taken kindly to him if they knew his clandestine past. Halvard was not at all fond of Castletown. If it had not been such an ideal location to continue his research into the masks that once brought so much misfortune and misery on Hyrule, he wouldn't have bothered stepping foot in the capital. There was no point in lamenting over that decision. Castletown attracted merchants from across the 10 kingdoms. As a result, it was a trove of news, rumors, and gossip. It hadn't taken him long to discover that the Gerudo had found a mask in their desert homeland, which was rumored to give its bearer great power. Well, so the rumors said. If there was any truth to them, Halvard would find out. It had been a peculiar afternoon. Usually, Halvard was greeted by a steady trickle of customers, mostly children tugging on their parents' arms while pointing ecstatically at the different items displayed on the shelves. His first customer of the afternoon had not been a child, or even a Hylian, but a Gerudo, asking for information about one of the masks he had researched. Halvard was reluctant to divulge the information, but the woman would not leave until she was satisfied he had told her everything he knew. As if things couldn't get more mysterious, a green-clad boy claiming to be a Kokiri had entered his shop just as the Gerudo woman left. A Kokiri? Ridiculous. Utterly preposterous. Everyone knew that the children of the forest never left the woods. His attempts to find a mask that would protect him from the wards guarding the woods had proven in vain. There was only one mask he knew of that could do that. No. That's far too dangerous, he thought. Besides, if the Gerudo King has it, those were dark signs. The sound of singing drew him away from his thoughts. The noise was coming from amongst a colorful array of masks arranged neatly on the shelves behind him. He quickly spotted the noisy mask. A sign beneath it read, "A mask for your true love." The object in question, a pearl with a symbol etched across his face, was reciting love poems. It was only supposed to do that when someone held it. With an exasperated sigh, Halvard grabbed the mask from the shelf and stuffed it into the drawer. The muffled poetry continued. He made a mental note to fix it later. As he gazed at his creations neatly arranged upon the shelves, his mind drifted back to the Gerudo who had visited his shop. Who was she? He wondered. She hadn't given him her name. She'd warned him not to trust her kind, as not all of them were on her side. It could have been paranoia on the woman's behalf, but Halvard doubted that. Just then there was a noise from the room behind him, and it wasn't the singing mask. Somebody was in the back of the shop. Halvard jerked his head up. Before he could open his mouth, or even call the city guard for what good that'd do him, someone grabbed him roughly from behind. He froze, feeling the cold bite of steel against his throat. A thief. "This is a poor way to conduct business, don't you think?" he said, trying to sound conversational, despite the fear creeping into his gut. There was a moment of shocked silence, his assailant apparently surprised by his lack of pleas for mercy. "We're looking for a mask. A soul mask." It was a woman. Her accent marked her as a Gerudo, but she didn't sound like the one he met earlier. "I know the sign outside says I sell magical masks, but I don't sell anything like that!" He winced, the cold steel pressing harder against his throat, cutting skin, blood welling from the small wound. "We are aware of that," a second woman said from somewhere beside him. "But you know where the one we're looking for is, don't you?" "I have no idea what you're talking about," Halvard said, feigning ignorance. He knew of one other soul mask, and hoped it wasn't the same one they were interested in. "Now kindly get out of my shop at once!" "I have a knife to your throat," the Gerudo threatened. "I suggest you cooperate, or else my grip might just slip. From the corner of his eye, he saw the sleeve of a red robe as one of the other women placed a scroll on the counter, unrolling it. Staring up at him was a picture of a mask. With its large eyes and 3 spikes protruding from either side, Halvard recognized the heart-shaped monstrosity instantly. Of all the masks he had studied, this was perhaps the most sinister and dangerous, its power only rivaled by the skull mask in the Gerudo King's possession. The mask staring up at Halvard from the weathered pages of the old tome could bend the earth, elements, and magic to its will, even over vast distances. Its ability to control the mind was unparalleled. The spirit in the mask was also rather insane. According to the few stories about it, Majora, created by the Shikak tribe whose namesake it bore, possessed multiple personalities and was incredibly dangerous. It had, after all, killed its creators, though Halvard could not have said what events transpired to bring about their fall. He gulped at the sight of Majora's image. "Do you know how dangerous that thing is?" "No more dangerous than our master, I am sure. It needs a strong mind to control, and he already has that," the Gerudo said. "I will have nothing to do with this absurdity," Halvard's voice shook, his fear mounting. Once, he would have never allowed himself to be caught in such a way. "I should have kept a knife on me." "Majora can only be recovered by someone who wants to find it, but has no desire for its power," the woman told him. "Otherwise, we would have gladly retrieved it ourselves." "I will not help you," Halvard repeated, coldly this time. "How disappointing. I was worried we would run into this little difficulty," the woman with the blade said coolly. "Perhaps we need to give you a little encouragement." She leaned closer to his ear. "If you don't help us, we will destroy your precious research and kill your family. Don't worry, you'll still be very much alive when we finish." Halvard's blood went cold. The Gerudo couldn't possibly know where in Hyrule his family lived. "You have a wife and 3 children. 2 girls and a boy, correct? It would be a terrible tragedy if something happened to them," the woman whispered. "We know where to find them." The words cut him more deeply than the knife could have, and any courage he'd felt earlier fled in a single heartbeat. How could they possibly know where his family lived? He fought off a wave of dizziness as he realized they must have been watching him for a while. When had he become so careless? "All right, I'll do it," Halvard gasped. Panic clawed at his mind as he thought of his wife's sweet smile, the laughter of his 2 young daughters, his son shouting happily as he played with a small wooden sword. No, he wouldn't let the Gerudo hurt them. "I'll help you, but I need to find a way to enter the woods first. The gateway to the realm Majora was cast into is somewhere in there. I will need time to find it. The wards protecting the forest are failing. You will have no trouble." Failing? That was impossible. Those wards had existed for centuries. Nothing could break them. The Gerudo didn't give him time to ponder this, as she added, "We will give you time to find the mask. You will have until the Festival of the Goddesses to find it. Don't try running. Nobody runs from Ganondorf." The woman released the blade, and Halvard gripped the table for support, his legs refusing to support his weight. "Oh, and if you consider breathing so much as a whisper of us to anyone else, we will find you," the woman threatened. Halvard looked up to get a glimpse of the Gerudo. He only saw the edge of a cloak as they disappeared into the back room. He knew the route they would take to escape, climbing into the alley through the window. He took a deep breath and brought his hand to his neck. The cut stung and his fingers were stained with blood. It was time to leave.
The green blades of grass shimmered in the afternoon sun as Link stood on the bridge leading across the Zora River. Impa stood by his side, while Navi perched on his shoulder. Off to the east, the volcano rose above the surrounding hills and smaller peaks, a thin cloud of dust blanketing its peak. Looks welcoming, Link thought. Once, he'd dreamed of adventuring outside the forest, like in the stories the great Deku Tree and Soraya told him. Sometimes, the Kokiri would act out those same tales while wearing masks and dancing around a campfire. Link missed those tales. In stories, the hero always won. There was never any question of whether he might die or see things that he could not unsee. Adventuring up a mountain might have made him giddy with excitement over a month ago, but it didn't now. The previous afternoon, Impa had led him back to the Silver Mare. The innkeeper knew Impa, and after apologizing profusely for letting Link escape, he promised it wouldn't happen again. Much to Link's displeasure, this meant ending up in a room with only a tiny window that was too small for him to squeeze through. Impa returned the following morning. They left before first light, when most of Castletown was still abed, and the few lights that Link could spot came from bakeries and guard towers. It was far too early for Link's liking, and far too cold, even wrapped within the fine wool of his hooded cloak. The guards grumbled when Impa demanded they let her through, but a fistful of rupees quickly bought their compliance. Soon, the grand walls of Castletown were far behind, and Link was riding through the untamed wilds of Hyrule Field. Malin had introduced him to a riding horse, but Link still found riding upon the back of a beast with a mind of its own unsettling. As the morning wore on, he became more comfortable with the idea, but was still afraid the horse might take off without any thought for the two people on its back. Impa was quiet for most of their journey, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings, and Link didn't dare complain that he was hungry, even after eating the bread she offered him. Once dawn arrived, a thin trickle of people and wagons began to fill the road. Most of these folk kept their gaze downcast or gave Impa a wide berth, some making gestures with their hands. "Why are they doing that?" Link asked, noticing that Impa scowled whenever this happened. "It's a sign meant to protect against evil spirits," Impa explained. At Link's questioning look, she added, "Not that it does anything. I have more effective means of protecting us than a little finger pointing." She tapped the sword strap to her side. The weapon did make her look more intimidating than usual. They lapsed once again into silence, Link lost in thought, listening to the rhythmic thud of hooves and the gentle sigh of the wind. At last they arrived at the immense bridge that spanned the Zora River. From the edge of the bridge, Link could see the small boats bobbing up and down the river's deceptively calm surface. Once they were across the bridge and had rounded the first few hills beyond the river, Impa stopped suddenly. Link looked up to see her studying the surrounding countryside. This will have to do," she said at last. "You're leaving me here?" Link asked, not liking that idea very much. "These roads are well patrolled, especially now," Impa assured him, dismounting and helping Link to clamber out of the saddle. "You'll be safe, and I have something to give you." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a ring, a single weeping eye etched into its center. "This marks you as one of my own. So long as you hold it, you will be identified as a member of my clan. I do not normally bestow this honor on Hylians, but given the circumstances, I think it will benefit you." "Your clan?" Link asked, taking the ring and twirling it between thumb and forefinger. "Yes, what's left of it," Impa grimaced, a faint frown twisting her mouth. Abruptly, she glared at Link, noticing that he was still staring at the ring. "Well, stop gawping and put it on." "Is it magical?" Link asked, curious. "No," Impa said testily. "It won't make you invisible or anything like that. It will simply mean that some shops and inns will not charge you full price, and most will think twice about harming you. It's considered bad luck to harm a Shika, which would be right, so long as I have anything to say about it. After what you experienced in Castletown, I feel it's necessary." Link felt a rush of gratitude, followed by confusion. How did she know he'd nearly been mugged? Had she questioned one of the guards? Link slipped the ring on, half expecting to feel different somehow. Now that that's done, we best get you on your way. That is Kakariko village. Impa pointed in the direction of the distant town. The village itself was hard to see from where he stood, but he could make out the buildings that dotted the foothills of Death Mountain on the town's outskirts. You will find the path to Death Mountain there. She nodded to the volcano. I suggest you wait until morning to start your ascent. It would not be wise to clamber around Death Mountain in the dark. Why is it called Death Mountain? Link asked. It was not exactly the most encouraging name, certainly not when he happened to be headed towards it. Maybe whoever called it that died trying to reach the summit, and their ghost was feeling rather unimaginative, Navi suggested. Link chuckled, but quickly stopped as Impa passed him a small pouch full of rupees. He stared at it, puzzled. You will need supplies, Impa explained. I trust you can help him with that, Navi? Navi nodded. Of course, I have been to Kakariko before. I am glad. That will make your task easier. Impa's gaze settled on Link, and he shifted his feet, finding her stern demeanor rather unsettling. I will send a bird to Darunia to let him know you are coming, Impa continued. I hope his pet does not eat it this time. What? Link gave her a bemused look, not understanding what she meant. Darunia has a pet dragon, Impa explained, sounding as though it was quite ordinary to have an enormous scaly lizard as a pet that could cause an entire kingdom to fall in flames. A dragon? Link breathed in wonder. The Kokiri didn't regard dragons with much esteem due to their tendency to set wooden objects on fire, and what little they knew of the creatures came from stories. These hadn't been enough to quench Link's desire to learn more about the formidable creatures. Yes, Impa said presently. It guards Death Mountain, but it would appear Ganondorf slipped past it on his way there. Does it eat people? Link blurted out. As much as he would love to see a dragon, he didn't like the idea of becoming its next meal. It will only attack you if Darunia tells it to. At Link's dismayed expression, Impa amended this with, Rest assured, he won't do that. Link didn't think it was much of a reassurance. How long will it take to get there? He asked. About a day, Impa answered before she glanced back the way they'd come. We have been idle long enough. I would accompany you, but I must return before my absence is noted. May the goddesses speed you on your journey. Impa turned her horse, guiding it back towards Castletown. His heart pounding with trepidation at the journey ahead of him, Link watched as she rode into the distance, realizing that he and Navi were once again alone. Knowing firsthand just how dangerous Hyrule could be, Link felt a sickening unease clench his gut. At least he wasn't far from the village. Even knowing that guards protected the road, he was unable to stop the sense of dread that rose in his chest. With difficulty, Link ignored it, not wanting Navi to think he was scared. We should get moving, Navi suggested, urging Link away from his thoughts. Best we try and get there before nightfall. Yeah, Link said, trying to sound enthused. He didn't want to seem dispirited, so he heeded her words and took off at a sprint towards Kakariko. Desperate to reach the village quickly, Link ran as fast as his legs would carry him. As exhaustion crept over him, his desire to be behind the walls of somewhere that offered protection from the creatures of the night was all that kept him from stopping. The town's walls were soon visible, and as he neared the village, the farmhouses became more numerous. Small pinpricks of light soon dotted the evening sky, the winter night clenching its icy grip upon Hyrule. Link gave a start when a wolf howled in the distance. Drawing his sword, he spun around, only to upset a bay horse pulling a wagon. The animal made a beeline towards the edge of the road, its ears flat, and came close to tumbling into a ditch. Whoa! What are you doing, kid? You trying to scare my horse to death? The man driving the wagon yelled angrily. Link was still looking around for any sign of the wolf, but could see none. Sorry, he said, stepping to the side as the wagon driver pulled his horse under control. The man grumbled under his breath and continued towards the gates of Kakariko. "It was just a wolf, Link," Navi said. "I'm sure of it. Wolfos sound different." Link was going to remind Navi that his hearing was not as good as hers, but decided not to. Annoyed, he silently berated himself for getting so jumpy. "It's all right," Navi said, noticing this. "You'll probably be jumpy for a little while, but nobody will blame you." "I know." Link sighed, sheathing his sword. Thankfully, nobody else had seen them, and the farmer they'd passed was now turning onto a crossroad, no doubt headed to his home for the night. Kakariko was a small hamlet built snugly into the rocky foothills of Death Mountain, a tall wall of gray stone shielding it from the outside world. 2 long rows of brick and wooden houses with slate roofs lined the wide street. The windmill at the end of this road overlooked a small empty square with nothing but a stone well in its center. It didn't seem to be in use at the moment, for a stone seal plugged the well's mouth. Link thought that was peculiar. When he asked Navi about it, she seemed distracted. Link decided not to press her with any more questions. Instead, he ventured onto one of the small dirt paths that branched off the main road. The houses along these narrow streets were smaller brick buildings with thatched roofs. The village was much quieter than Hyrule's capital and held a far more tranquil air, which Link liked. The chatter of insects reminded him of home in the ranch, his chest throbbing dully as memories tugged at him. Cook fires, laughter, Soraya, Forenz, hunting with Bryn and the others. With a small shake, earning a concerned look from Navi, Link focused on his surroundings. Now wasn't the time to get lost in his memories. He decided to scope out the village first, wanting to know the layout of the land before he found somewhere to stay. Link soon discovered a wide switchback trail which led up to the steep slopes of Death Mountain. A second path branched off from the switchback, leading around a bend and cutting a swathe through the rocky hill. Link soon found the way along the track, blocked by a wall and a gate that was too tall to see over. "Kakariko Graveyard," Navi said, sounding strangely troubled for the second time since seeing the well. "There's a stone door on one side, built into the side of the hill. It always gives me the creeps." "Why?" Link asked curiously, having forgotten his earlier resolve not to ask any more questions. "Shadow magic emanates from beyond the doorway." "Something to do with Ganondorf?" "No," Navi replied, pursing her lips and staring at the gate. "This is different." Link could see little of the graveyard beyond the gate, but an icy chill trickled down his spine as he caught a glimpse of it in between the gate's iron bars. It felt as though the spirits of the dead were watching him, whispering as they contemplated the intruders at the edge of their resting place. Let's go and find somewhere to stay," he suggested. The graveyard did not seem like a good idea, even if it did keep him away from prying eyes. Navi approved, and together they headed back to the village. It took them a little while to find the inn. Navi might have been here before, but the town had changed over the years. Link accidentally wandered into someone's home twice before a tirade of angry yells sent him scurrying back out the door. "Really? What did you expect? You can't just walk into people's homes like that," Navi chastised him after the second time. "I told you we should ask someone, or at least knock." She gave a huff on annoyance. "You know what? I'll ask." Finally, after a few directions and a guard who shook his head murmuring about irresponsible parents and wandering children, they found the inn. It was a 2-story wooden building with a sign out the front featuring a picture of a Goron clutching a pint of ale. Navi read the words beneath the picture. "The Dancing Goron. Looks like this is it," she said with an air of relief. Link pushed the door open, and a blast of warm air rushed out to meet him. He stood there for a moment before an angry shout from a table nearby demanded he shut the door and stop letting the cold in. Link stepped inside, his eyes drawn to a warm fire cracking merrily in the hearth. Ripples of jovial laughter came from a group of men playing cards at a table near the fire, and from atop a platform, a flutist played a lively tune. Despite the inn's name, there were no Gorons to be seen. Nobody paid much notice to Link, except for a woman carrying a platter of food. "Well, aren't you a cute little thing?" she purred, looking down at the boy. Link felt the heat in his cheeks rise. The woman took in the sword behind Link and gawked. "Looks like you're a fighter, too. Got the scars to match it. You usually walk around with your pa's dagger?" "It's mine," Link told her. "It was a gift." "A gift? I see. You take a wrong turn or something?" "We're after a room," Navi intervened, and the woman looked at her. "A talking pet fairy? Now I haven't seen that before." Navi glared angrily at the word pet. The woman did not seem to notice as she nodded to the counter opposite the entrance. "Master Everett will sort you out." Master Everett was standing behind the counter, cleaning a glass. From the state of the rag he was using, Link doubted it was going to get any cleaner. "You lost, kid?" the man asked gruffly, scowling impatiently at the Kokiri. "I'm after a room for tonight," Link told him. Master Everett seemed a little surprised at the confidence in Link's voice. He saw the sword and shield behind Link, and his eyes widened further. "How many?" he asked, quickly resuming his gruff countenance. "2," Link replied. Including Navi, Impa had paid for his stay at the Silver Mare, so Link wasn't quite sure what to expect, even with the Shikan ring adorning his finger. He still wasn't entirely sure how that was going to help him. "1 bed is fine," Navi added hastily. Link cast her a quizzical look before realizing his mistake. "Just 1. "Your parents got you sleeping on the floor or something?" Everett asked. "I presume they're staying with you." "No, the great Deku Tree was my father. Link trailed off, not wanting to acknowledge the truth he had been trying to deny ever since leaving the woods. He got no sympathy from the innkeeper. "You trying to be funny or something?" he asked. "No, I'm a Kokiri." Master Everett looked at him as though he had just sprouted an extra head. "Okay, Kokiri, huh? Right, and my pa's a Zora." Everett scoffed and rolled his eyes. Link scowled at the man, suddenly reminded of Mido, only this person was a lot bigger. Everett smirked, and then seeing that Link was still glaring, he sighed. "Fine. I won't say no to a customer who can pay, even if you are young. If you have 20 rupees, I'll give you a room for the night. If you want food, that will cost you 10 rupees extra." Link handed over 2 red rupees. In exchange, Everett handed 2 blue rupees over the counter. As he did, the man's eyes flickered over the ring on Link's hand. "Keep that one," he said, pushing one of the red rupees across the counter. The man was looking Link up and down, frowning as he did so. "You know, boy, that ring better not be stolen. It'll be bad luck for you if it is." "It's not stolen," Link piped up. "It was given to me." "I see. Well, we'll know the truth of that soon enough." Everett stood straighter, brushing his apron. "Come along then. I'll show you to your room." Snatching up his change, Link let the innkeeper direct him to a room upstairs at the far end of the hall. It looked like the room he had stayed in at the Lon Lon Ranch, except for the animal skin rug. Deer skin, Link realized. Once the innkeeper had left, Navi decided to go and see if she could find one of her kin who dwelt on Death Mountain. It sounded far away, but what would have taken hours of climbing for Link was only a short flight for Navi. Despite Navi's promise that she'd be back soon, Link felt very much alone without her. He nearly jumped out of his skin when somebody knocked on the door. He opened it, gripping his sword protectively in one hand. A boy stood on the other side, bearing a tray with a steaming bowl of hot stew. When he saw Link's sword, the boy almost dropped the tray, his eyes going wide. Sorry, I wasn't going to hurt you." Link tried to sound reassuring, quickly relaxing his sword arm. The boy scurried over to the table opposite the bed, set the bowl down on it, and tore out the door faster than he'd come in. "I really am getting skittish." He had half expected a Gerudo to come bursting through the door, but it was unlikely they would get through the common room or the busy kitchen without anyone noticing. He ate his stew so slowly that it was cold by the time he finished. Yawning, he threw himself onto the bed, his thoughts drifting aimlessly, like a leaf tossed upon the waters of a lake. Through heavy-lidded eyes, he listened to the notes of the flute drifting up from the common room below. Then, a lute played a slow tune, the singer's voice muffled. Link wished he could just slip out of the room and watch the festivities. Surely there was no harm in that. He eyed the window, wondering where Navi was. What was taking her so long? He sat up on the bed and stretched. Maybe he could go downstairs for a bit. Tap, tap, tap. The noise brought Link back to full awareness, even though it was faint. The thought of a Gerudo surging into the room came back into his mind, unbidden and unwelcome. Then he realized it was just Navi. She was scowling at the closed window, hands on her hips, her irate squeaks muffled. Link's heart soared with relief, and he opened the window a crack. "What did you shut me out for? I nearly flew into the glass," Navi scolded him before taking flight and landing on the table. She eyed the rest of the stew before Link offered it to her. He wasn't feeling that hungry. "Sorry, I only had the window closed because I was worried about anything getting in," Link told her. Navi sighed. "I doubt anything will trouble us here. Besides, I found one of the fairies I was looking for. She offered to keep an eye out for any trouble." Navi hesitated before adding, "I also found out that the Gorons aren't happy because Ganondorf has been threatening them. Now he's placed a curse on the creatures that inhabit Dodongo's cavern near their home." "Do you think they're okay? I mean, I can't imagine many things threatening them," Link said, lying down on the bed to sleep. He didn't quite trust his own words. Not even the great Deku Tree's powers were enough to stop Ganondorf. Months ago, Link wouldn't have believed that possible, but now he wasn't so sure. "No," Navi agreed, sounding just as unconvinced. At Link's questioning look, she added, "There's no point worrying right now. You need to sleep. It's a long walk tomorrow." Link tossed his hat towards the cupboard at the foot of the bed, missing and almost hitting Navi. "Thanks," Navi muttered, scooping it from the floor and putting it on top of the cupboard before resting upon it. "Good night, Link." They said nothing more after that, as Link put out the candle beside the bed. A twinge of unease settled over him as he lay back down. The talk of curses had stirred his mind, stifling any thoughts of sleep. The muffled sounds of talking and laughter stirred, and like mud in a churning river current, they rose and blighted his dreams. Splintered wood flew through the air. The door to the room crashed open, face covered in a red veil, curved blade in hand. A Gerudo charged into the room, staring down the helpless boy before her. Two wolfos prowled astride her, snarling menacingly, lips curled, revealing their sharp yellow canines. Link opened his mouth in a scream. He tried to move, but his muscles would not obey. Paralyzed, he looked into the Gerudo's eyes. The assassin strode forward, curved sword raised. The air around her shimmered and coalesced, warping as the Gerudo changed form, becoming someone else. Ganondorf. The desert man laughed coldly, opening his fist, revealing a gem on the palm of his glove. A bowl of fire erupted in front of the gem, streaking through the air, and the world erupted in flames. Link screamed, his head connecting with something solid. White hot pain lanced through his skull. "Link?" Navi called, clasping a hand to his head. Link looked to see her staring at him worriedly. "Link? Are you okay?" she asked, flying up beside him. "What's wrong?" Feeling something warm and sticky on his fingers, Link took his hand away from his head and stared at it. With the aid of Navi's glow, he saw a red smear. "You must have smacked your head on the bedpost," Navi reasoned calmly. "Must have hurt." A bit," Link mumbled, still dazed from the pain. He rose from the bed and stumbled over to the wash basin. He dumped most of the contents of a pitcher into it and then soaked the edge of a towel. Despite Navi's disgruntled remarks of disgust, he used this to sponge the blood from his scalp and then tossed the towel into a corner of the room. He poured the last of the water into a cup, gulped it down thirstily, and then returned to his bed. "Are you okay?" Navi asked. Link nodded, slowly lying back down. Sweat had soaked the pillow, making it useless. Throwing it onto the floor, he curled up on the uncomfortably damp mattress. Was it too much to ask for his life to go back to the way it had been? He just wanted to be home. He missed Soraya, his friends. Heck, he even missed Mido and his band of cronies. He sniffled, burying his face in the sheets as he began to cry. He didn't want Navi to hear him. He was supposed to be strong, courageous, just like the heroes in those stories of old. But he wasn't. He was just a kid, a kokiri, and more frightened than he had ever been in his life.
Earlier that evening, Amira was dead. Nabooru's mind was still reeling in shock from the news her attendants had given her. The girl was not supposed to be in Lon Lon. She was young by Gyarados standards and inexperienced. Ganondorf had sent her and 2 other Gyarados to raid the ranch, instead of the warriors Nabooru had chosen for the task. 2 of the Gyarados had gone to dispose of the Sheik and guards protecting the ranch, leaving Amira's path to the Emerald clear. When they realized their companion had been caught, and they weren't able to rescue her, the 2 Gyarados had fled. Ganondorf did not turn around from the balcony of his room when Nabooru walked in. He was gazing out at the starlit sky, arms folded across his chest, his gaze pensive. Nabooru swallowed, forcing herself to keep calm and remain straight-faced despite her fury. "Nabooru, I was beginning to wonder what was keeping you," Ganondorf said conversationally, still not turning around. He did not sound very sorry, and that tone only infuriated Nabooru more. "Why did you send her?" Nabooru asked, barely keeping the anger from her voice. "Send who?" Ganondorf asked, tilting his head towards her. With feigned surprise, he answered his own question. "Ah, Amira." He turned, meeting Nabooru's eyes and looking thoughtful. "Yes, I did send her, and I was terribly sorry to hear what happened." "Why?" Nabooru demanded again. "Don't play ignorant with me, Dragmire." "Each Gyarados must earn their place amongst the ranks of our warriors. It was past time she faced her test," answered Ganondorf, as if this were the most obvious explanation in the world. Each Gyarados had to undergo 7 trials in the Spirit Temple before they could wield a spear or sword and be recognized as a warrior. Ganondorf was lying. There were no other tests after that. "You sent her to punish me, didn't you?" Nabooru asked heatedly. "Because I failed to make sure the Kokiri Emerald was retrieved." "Sent her to punish you?" Ganondorf scoffed, looking scandalized. "Your accusation wounds me, my love." "My love?" Nabooru's anger boiled at those 2 words. It had been a long time since she and Ganondorf had been lovers. "You sent my sister to her death, and you have the hide to call me your love?" Ganondorf regarded her, his demeanor becoming icy, and then he cast a look over her shoulder at the 2 guards, neither of them giving any indication that they were listening to the conversation. Nabooru knew better than to think they weren't eavesdropping. "Leave us," he ordered. Without any hesitation, the guards obeyed, and Nabooru didn't turn to watch them go. She waited until she heard the door close behind the 2 women, her gaze locked on her king. Ganondorf sighed and strode over to a decanter on the table, pouring himself some wine. "We have come so far, Nabooru. Why do you doubt me now?" There was an icy edge to his question, and for a moment, as Ganondorf took a sip of the mulled wine, Nabooru didn't respond. "Because you would never have sacrificed a Gyarados to punish another," she felt like saying, but decided against it. I trusted you before you took that damn mask, she said coolly, her rage barely contained. What has it done to you? I've told you before. It was a gift, Nabooru, Ganondorf said, gritting his teeth. A gift to give our race hope. Hope? How is risking a war with 9 kingdoms bringing us hope? Nabooru yelled, barely keeping her voice even. The 10th kingdom, the Blends, would rally to Ganondorf's cause if only because they saw the deity within the skull mask as their god. It is a war we can win, Nabooru. Once the Triforce is in our hands and the Hylians won't stand a chance, Ganondorf said slowly, taking another sip of wine and putting the cup down. He walked over to a chessboard on a table by the fireplace, the pieces neatly arranged in their starting positions. He picked up a figure of a Hylian king, the White King, staring at it thoughtfully. Even if this plan of yours does work, all of Hyrule's neighbors will turn on us, Nabooru responded, watching as Ganondorf turned the white marble figurine in his fingers. They will fall, Ganondorf replied, placing the figurine back on its starting square, still examining the board thoughtfully. He sighed, bowing his head as if disappointed. I feared you might be too soft for this, Nabooru. You object to killing a child, and I'm quite sure you would have told whoever you ordered to retrieve the stone and not to kill the boy. Soft? How dare he call me soft? Nabooru barely managed to keep her face straight. The Gerudo are not murderers, Nabooru replied, her restraint breaking as fury seeped into her words. We do not go murdering children in their beds, and we don't go killing each other to punish the failure of others. I admit this is distasteful work, Nabooru, Ganondorf said absently. War always is. If we are to succeed, sacrifices must be made, even if it means doing that which we would rather not do. Besides, you need not concern yourself with the boy now. Nabooru felt a chill. What have you done to him? Nothing. Yet. Tell your women not to concern themselves with him anymore. Nabooru stood there, confused. Why? She questioned. He has gone to find the other 2 spiritual stones. Though he doesn't know it, Sheikah will be watching him closely. I will wait to see if he retrieves them, and if he does, then I will obtain them myself. There was a fire in those eyes now. Nabooru almost flinched at the pure determination and madness swirling within them, his cold gaze meeting hers. His voice became deadly quiet. I know you spoke to Impa. If I discover that you have uttered so much of a word of this to her, you will be punished. You would not dare lay a finger on me! Nabooru found she was unable to contain her rage any longer as she shouted those words, but she was unsure whether or not it was from her lack of privacy or his indifferent demeanor. How could he know? They had been alone in Impa's chambers, or so she had thought. There had been no raven on the balcony or any other bird that she had noticed that Ganondorf could have used as a spy. Ganondorf regarded her icily. See that I don't have to. I said we would have to make sacrifices, and it would pain me greatly if I had to make you one of them. Don't fail me again, or double-cross me, and I will put this behind us. Damn you, Ganondorf, Nabooru thought. Damn you to hell! She turned her back on her king and strode out of the room, not even bothering to shut the door behind her.
Ganondorf turned and swung his hand at the chessboard with an angry snarl. The pieces scattered across the floor, clattering as they hit the ground. He regarded the White King on the floor for a moment, and then crushed it with the heel of his boot. How dare Nabooru betray me, he thought angrily as he strode back towards the door to the balcony. You should have killed her, a voice whispered in his mind. Ganondorf froze, regarding the voice for a moment. It was the spirit within the mask he had taken from the cave in the Gerudo Valley. I have another idea, he announced to the empty room. Even as he looked, two cloaked figures on brooms descended out of the evening sky to land on the balcony. One stumbled off their broom as they landed. They were robed in black, but their uncovered heads made them distinguishable. One had white hair, while the other's hair was a fiery red. Their haggard faces resembled crumpled parchment. There were bags under their eyes, crooked noses, and large bulbous eyes. It looked like they had been experimenting with magic surgery and failed abysmally. The result was not in the least bit attractive.
Really, Kotake?
The red-headed witch, known as Kome, began as her twin nearly fell over her own broom.
You are becoming clumsy in your old age. I'm the same age as you, Kome!
Kotake snapped irritably as she picked up her broom.
You have gone senile if you can't remember your own age. I have not, Kotake rounded on her sister. Don't make me hit you with my broom. Shut up, Kome, before the guards hear us.
I do hate to interrupt your most amusing arguments, and I do miss them dearly. Ganondorf said dryly, I have asked you here to do me a favor. Both witches stopped bickering and looked at him instantly with their large white eyes.
Of course, Kotake responded. We would have been here sooner, but Kome, what Kotake is trying to say,
Kome interrupted loudly,
is sorry we're late. What is this favor you want?
Kome asked. It would seem that Nabooru may need to be reminded of where her loyalties should lie. I want you to spy on her. When I send her back to the fortress in 3 days, follow her.
We can do that, said Kotake. What do you want us to do if she turns traitor?
Ganondorf replied to that in an icy tone colder than any spell Kotake could conjure. Deal with her as you see fit.
Isn't she your wife? Kome asked. I know she cannot bear a child anymore, but...
That no longer concerns me, Ganondorf cut in. All emotion left his voice as he spoke quietly. Not anymore.